Hey everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about my latest study, which was, in all honesty, really a struggle. And I really like getting this opportunity to discuss struggles with you guys. A struggle, especially for an artist like me, which my whole really style is correct as you go. A struggle for me is something that, and no matter how much I corrected or revisited, it just kept for every brushstroke I added, I destroyed it. When I deal with a struggle, I because I'm such a fixer, I kind of go back and keep fixing things and looking at it like it's not my piece, critiquing it before and after, just taking my time. I tend to hide that it was a struggle and it'll look like some of my best pieces. But it was a struggle, and I want that to be recognized. It was one of the more difficult pieces for me to deal with. The biggest struggle was not, I wouldn't say the perspective or the anatomy, or because I'm very familiar with how to make something look like a nose or a mouth. I've taught it long enough. I'm a portrait specialist, so I understand basically how much realism I need to pull in and how much to leave out for it to still look acceptable and of high skill. So it's sort of me like painting not for me, but for someone else who is viewing the realism and expecting it. For me, I'd love to minimize realism as much as possible and start stylizing very soon, which I hope to pursue. The struggle was in the disinterest I had in the entire study. The motivation, I think, and inspiration are two very, very fickle things. They are not what help you finish work. Discipline is what helps you finish work. Saying, you know what, I know it sucks, I know I hate it, I don't feel like drawing, I want to start something new, I want to start something more fun, and I want to like drawing. I don't want to, but of course, if we're always pursuing the fun, when are we really challenging ourselves? And this was a challenge because it was a struggle in that I hated the topic. I don't like eyes that are hidden. I ended up caving in and drawing the eyes looking upward. But it was really, really a learning experience in how impatient I am. When I started hating the piece and I started, advancing more into the realism and getting it more completed, I started noticing that I am trying to build the stage. I'm trying to make it look acceptable in its present state instead of just keep etching away and carving at the real focus of the drawing, which was the portrait, the eyes, the nose, the mouth. I started building around it. I started adding in hair and changing the way I was presenting it against the background, black and white checkered background business. Then I was doing all the stuff that I tell people not to do. And that was because I was disinterested. So it revealed to me that a lot of the reasons why students collapse and start depending on lines and color is because they're trying to entertain themselves, not just because it doesn't look good and they're getting anxiety and they don't know the fundamentals and they start depending on contrast like I usually talk about. No, it was just plain boredom. And that's what made me make really bad decisions. Decisions that were all about entertainment and not about respecting the geometric anatomy or preserving a core shadow or doing the real business that makes something look realistic and professional and advanced forward. The steps you take as a professional towards more professionalism are very small. They're tiny little steps. A beginner to an intermediate are massive steps, humongous steps in perspective and form control. But as you get better, you take smaller and smaller steps because there's less steps to take, and the advancement is very, very hidden and difficult to find and elusive, and improvement is just so incredibly slow because it's in the fine details and how all those tiny little details add up into one thing. So a lot of people have praised me for this work, saying I love the control of the style, I like how you enlarge the nose, I like the eye, it looks one of your best pieces. But if I were to be quite honest, it was my least favorite experience, the most stressful, going back and forth, changing everything, and then finally deciding on changing the eye. When I was having trouble with dealing, like the one thing that wasn't entertaining me, let's talk about why I wasn't entertained. That was because I love eyes. I love drawing eyes. Eyes are the heart of my gallery. Just the gaze, the focus, the deep brown color, that richness in the eye. So I had none of that to lean on and entertain myself with, because that is technically a part of the drawing process. You're drawing something you enjoy. That's why you keep going back to that subject. I keep going back to the subject of the face because faces are phenomenal. So I was trying to find different ways of making her eye look kind of rotated far away, closer up towards the eye rotated towards the viewer. I was trying to raise the eyebrows, lower the eyebrows. I was making her stern. I was making her content. And I just kept going back and forth. And it's supposed to be a study. It's supposed to be a beautiful combination between struggle and success, and that you learn something in that study. So I wasn't getting that at all. The more I adjusted the eye, the more I shrunk the eye. I mean, now I'm looking at it. Now I know what the problem is. The eye was way too high on the horizontal center axis of the eyeball. And so the lower eyelid puff, that little ball, was actually where the eye was supposed to be, but I didn't see that. I was just too kind of focused on making it look good in its current state. And you see here, I'm trying to rotate the eye away further so that the pupil looks further away and we get that blankness in the eyeball. But still, then I was also unimpressed. And when I'm streaming, I'm entertaining people. So there's always people asking me, oh, this was wrong, this is right. Are you going to change that? What is that now? What are you doing now? And you probably wonder why the hell I'm still streaming my process. And that's because of that. I want to work well under pressure. So exposing my process to this, exposing my weaknesses, is one really great way I don't end up becoming that teacher that likes critiquing everyone and doesn't accept critique. So it's really great for me to have that extra voice of annoyance. It is annoying when a viewer is like, oh, that looks wrong. Oh, but they're right. They're right. They know exactly what they're talking about when they say something looks off, and they're always right, because something does look off. Something does look weird. People's faces come in all shapes and sizes. And it's not that it's a different kind of face. It's that I did something wrong. That's why a person who even doesn't draw, like a layman who doesn't draw at all, would notice there's something wrong. And that's why I stay on that stream. But the problem is, another big kind of trick that happens, or another trap, is that I end up wanting to entertain my viewers. So it's another problem. So again, it's not always anxiety that causes a struggle in your painting process. It's your desire to entertain yourself. And in this case, me entertaining others who are watching my stream. The entertainment, I should remind myself, is in the study. Whether or not I'm making the best choices, that should be the entertainment, just the study in its raw form. I shouldn't be adding and taking away components of the drawing so that it looks better. As you can see here, I got rid of the hair. I'm still thinking about the general structure. I add this weird checkerboard thing for the contrast, which looks great, but that's it. It was just the presentation. It was just a cool little composition trick. It didn't actually, and look at that, I didn't actually change anything about the face, any substantial change or structure on the face. That painterly collaboration of brushstrokes was pretty much the only thing that kept the painting going. And that checkerboard kind of like black and white thing was all just on the exterior, begging for contrast, begging for entertainment, begging for something to save my painting. And then I revisited it, and I loved what I saw. It looks great. A lot of people love this. My viewers were entertained, but I knew something was off because that was way too easy. It was, what am I going to do? Every painting from now on, if I'm struggling and I can't identify the perspective problem or the anatomy in the eye, I'm going to just draw a checkerboard background or a black background, do something interesting in the background, smoke and mirrors, and distract from the real fundamentals that I'm not representing, because a professional will look right through that. And that didn't sit well with me. So I wanted to be a hero in a little way and just get rid of the black background, go back to gray, and just ground myself a little bit, take a break. I took a break, I came back to it, and I realized that I was disinterested in the drawing because of the eye. So let me give a little bit, let me just give myself some slack and see if I can redraw the eye. I ended up redrawing the eye in probably 30 minutes or less, because that's how pent up my desire to see the eye was. The downward facing eye, I saw too much eyelid, and I wanted her to look up so we see more pupil and iris. Do something interesting with the eyebrows, and then reintroduce the hair, which I loved. I'm starting to be really interested in hair now, and just gray out the background and see what I can do after all of that has been combined together. See if there's any leftover fundamental problems that I can correct, either in the mouth or the rotation or the blur of the composition or the focal point. You know, there's so many things that I could have discovered if I hadn't been dilly-dallying trying to entertain my viewers. So I grade the background. I discovered, okay, where there was a real weird black rotation towards the background, I can get that contrast I want against the face, but with a body of black hair. I don't have to make the entire thing black, so it's a little bit of both worlds, and it's a more realistic representation of where black comes from as a backdrop with a portrait. Black hair as a backdrop is a wonderful way to bring in contrast, natural contrast. After I grayed out the background, I discovered a major problem in the mouth. The entire lower half of the face was as if there was no skeleton keeping it together. It was kind of just like sinking or sagging down away from the face. I discovered the big eye problem that I mentioned earlier, and I corrected that. All because I grayed the background and just stopped, I'm sorry for the word, fucking around with the entertainment aspect of the art. So ask yourselves, are you sometimes entertaining with your work? Are you sometimes busy trying to impress your viewers and busy trying to impress yourself? If you're 45, 1 hour, even 2 hours is a short amount of time for a study. If you're 2 hours into a drawing and it doesn't look absolutely presentable, what does that do to you? Does that make you nervous? Does that make you high anxiety? Does that make you upset? And how are you responding to that? Are you going to be trying to make it look presentable, or are you going to actually go in there and actually work on the real content of the anatomy, the thing that will make it look complete, which is raising contrast in focal areas, sharpening edge work where it's needed, shrinking the brush, and presenting detail where focal point is needed. All of that is where? In the eye on a portrait. Minimizing contrast, detail, and edge work on the areas outside of the focal point. Making sure that you are rotating the mouth. So the Cupid's bow was really messed up early on because I was just so flustered. I was so upset that I just was not getting a proper read. And even towards the end, even with the eye looking down, it ended up looking okay. Even though I wasn't entertained and I wasn't happy with the eyeball. It was an accurate, proportionate, downward looking eyelid. And once I realized, okay, I got the study done, I'm good, I figured that part out, now I want to do something where it's still something nice for my portfolio, it's something nice for my future students, it's still entertaining, and it's entertaining to me, but still grounded in a centralized kind of form study environment. So I'm not doing some crazy checkered background, 3D trick kind of business with the canvas. I'm actually just making sure all of the talent that I am focusing on is just basically inside the study, which is inside the face. So I started seeing my vision clear up. I started refocusing fine detail on the eyebrow, as you can see. I raised contrast around the eye. I would have brought in more wrinkles around the eyelid and more lashes, but by this time I think I was making the decision that I was going to be redoing the eye entirely. So I wasn't so worried about the eyeball not being perfectly detailed. I knew I was going to bring in hair. Hair was going to raise the contrast significantly around the eye, as well as increasing the amount of detail focus in the eye. So thinner, smaller brush strokes for the hair around the eye only, thicker brush strokes around the edges of the canvas and towards the mouth and the nose, and a medium kind of size in between the two extreme sizes of hair. So smaller, sharper, everything brighter around the focal point, and even cast shadows, you can try to push a sharpness there as well. I duplicated the layer for the final, and then I used Gaussian blur filter on the entire scene and deleted away only where the focal point was. So for the new layer, I deleted a blurred eye. I kept the original sharpness, but everything else had the blur, which worked like a photography blur that made the eye look more focused and, of course, more interesting. I did bring in a couple cool little tricks here and there with Dodge Tool and Brighten, and then try to bring in some like more of a moist look to the eye, to the mouth, sorry, just to make it look more human and supple. I tried to make her look less old by those extra wrinkles around her jowls. As you can see, I start the hair around the eye. That's where I start the hair because that's what's going to be the highest cluster the highest focus of sharp hairs, and then I threw those larger brush strokes everywhere else. Enlarge your brush stroke for hair around your focal point, outside of your focal point. Shrink your brush stroke for hair around the focal point. I didn't want to fill the canvas with her, so I didn't complete the rest of her head. I just, kind of as if she's wearing a hood or something. I kept the edges of the canvas non-black. The one reason I did that is because we would have had one side of the canvas black, one side of the canvas bright. And that would have made, again, a weird checkering effect. So I didn't want to use any of the tricks I was depending on early in the process. And then here I'm just building really, really basic bodies of hair in response to the light source. I'm trying to see how much shine I want in the hair, but will still make the eye the most focus. Will still make the eye a focus and bring back the attention there, but still provide enough detail in that focal area. That's one of the trickiest things to do. Things around the eyeball are high focus, but they cannot be they cannot contest the eye as the focal point. So you are constantly having to zoom out. A lot of the questions and the struggles are answered when you zoom out, when you simplify. That's how I got through the struggle of this piece. That's how I ended up making it a success, not giving up on it and throwing it in the recycle bin, which is really like throwing in the towel for me. I take it personally a great deal when I'm painting. It just feels like I could have done better. Here I am teaching people, and I can't even push myself to struggle. So I hate throwing in the towel. I hate seeing my PSDs just lined up inside recycle bin. No, you shouldn't worship every study you do. You should also try to make sure that you did your absolute best. And I did not feel like I was doing my absolute best when I was giving up on this piece. So I'm happy that I found a balance. I'm happy that I discovered that I was trying to entertain, and it's definitely something I'm going to start teaching and warning about. Be very careful not to be an entertainer. You're not an entertainer. You're not here to draw what people want to see. That's a very different kind of art. Make sure you're drawing what is actually a challenge that'll enrich your visual library, enrich your knowledge. I'm not sick of the brown eye. I'm not bored of it. I love beautiful rich brown eyes. They're wonderful for creating that contrast, and I hate depending on those anime sparkles of blue and green and gray eyes to make my focal point work. But I really, really have been dying to paint a set of blind eyes. So that's something that I did for this piece. Something about the way the eyeliner and the hair and the eyebrow being pure black made me adding in that blind eye. Like a blind eye is an eye that has no pupil as well, so they can't see. Everything is milky. And that's what I tried to do. When I introduce a black eye, it's very easy for the eye to look big, because essentially what makes eyes look big is a dark, big iris and pupil. What makes an eye look big secondary, I would say, is actual size in the eyeball, deep set eye sockets, lower eyelid size. Those are things that make the eye look big. So I didn't want to give her blind eyes, big sparkly blind eyes, as well as massive size in the eyeball. So I didn't enlarge it that much more. The scale of the eye. Remember, scale of eyeball, eyelid, and upper and lower, and crease is very different from eye size when we're discussing pupil and iris. They have a very different role to play. And pupil and iris have a very different effect when they are both black, when they are either black or colored eyes. So that's some stuff I picked up just along the way, just because of how many dark eyes I've been painting. I don't like depending on scale. I never like oversizing eyeballs. I like giving a more modest size. Even to the pupil and the iris, I like giving really, really modest sizing. And then as soon as I added those eyes in, I loved the piece. Everything came together. The entire time I was missing a focal point because the eyes were looking down, and then it became a success. And I could say it's probably, a lot of people are saying that it's one of their favorite studies of mine. And it really has a lot to do with realizing why I wasn't having fun, realizing what I was doing that was volatile and destructive to my drawing, and trying to be an entertainer both for myself and my viewers. And because I have to sit there and talk, and I really do have to entertain people while I'm teaching or while I'm painting. So I don't like being a boring streamer or not using my voice. I like talking to my viewers. And as well as not being too much of a kind of concrete in my decision not to be completely entertaining. I still wanted to paint something that I liked. And that was the upward looking blind eye. It really completed it. I didn't end up drawing a really sharp pupil. I didn't overdo the focal point. It was still technically a very modestly done eye, and you can see how fast I did it. Even with time lapse, it actually was a pretty fast process. And the lips and the mouth are still very centralized and high rendering power because it is a close-up portrait. Close-ups do tend to have a unified rendering everywhere. It's only in probably busts or bigger that you don't want to have anything contest the eyes. But the struggle was real, but only because weaknesses were not checked. Weaknesses went unchecked, and that is me trying to be too much of an entertainer. I found a really successful middle ground, and even then I still finished the downward facing eye, just so I can say that I did not give up on that specific study, and then I went on to do and present it with a different eye that I actually liked. And that made it all the difference, both in my confidence in myself, not feeling like I threw in the towel, and in having something to show for all the work. So a nice piece in your portfolio is always a real motivational factor to start another piece later on. If you keep throwing away all your pieces because it's not fun enough, then you're never going to really have anything in your portfolio at the end of the day. A year or two are going to pass and you have one or two pieces to show. So make sure you're finding that gentle middle ground. Do the stuff you don't want to do that's not fun so that you can do the fun later and not feel guilty. Thank you everyone for watching. I will speak to you guys next month. Bye.